Hey, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, or whatever time it is where you are. This is Tommy Danielsen calling in from California. And we are back with the Miles and Points report, which is simulcast onto many channels now, including Rudy Maxis, who was not able to join us today. I'm here with Marshall Jackson, who is a travel commentator on his blog, MJ on Travel, which is also on social media, where you can see everything from pulled pork to airplanes.
Yeah, I should probably update that blog sometime too.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It's better. I don't have a blog either. I just get to yap. It's much easier. You don't have to do any work when you just sit here. Oh, yes. And I got, for the first time in history today, so we are now July 7th. So what we're trying to talk about today is current right now, July 7th of 2022. This is actually our 20th show. I got a letter today from the Italian authorities. It looks like I got a ticket.
Nice.
And this is new. I've never had that happen before. I got a ticket so this is a ticket that I shouldn't have gotten. We drove into Bellagio back in 2019 to do a tour of a hotel there. And the hotel told us, yeah, come in front, park right in front of us. We have a parking space here. But when you drive in there, they have to tell the city that you're parking there. And they didn't. So I got a $70. And I was like, I contacted the hotel. They were going to contact the city. And here, I'm in speeding tickets, but here's actually a collection agency. The Collection Bureau of America is a debt collector. So I guess I'm going to have to pay attention to it, not throw it in the trash anymore. That's
I guess so.
Yeah. So July, we've talked a lot this week also on Travel Minutes with Rudy about travel disruption, how difficult it is. Flights are delayed, not enough staffing. Some of the industry not willing to hire back just yet. They want to play it by ear and things like that. So we're not going to talk anything about that today. I think we're going to talk. The only thing we're going to talk about today that's kind of touches a little bit on that is legislation, lack of legislation for keeping airlines responsible for delays and cancellations here in the US. And they've done a pretty decent job with that in Europe, haven't they?
I think most people would think so. But it's a little different here in the good old USA,
Yeah.
One could debate the finer points of whether some of the EU rules would incentivize operators to fly flights they shouldn't fly. I think I remember some chit chat about that when that was first going on. I don't know. It seems to have worked out okay to me.
Right. Yeah. So what it pretty much the EU 261 entails is that if you are delayed, so there are some things that are included. If there's weather, there's nothing you can do about it. If there are acts of God, there's nothing you can do about it. So you won't get any compensation then. But if the airplanes break, if they don't have staff, all that kind of stuff, then they have to pay up. And it varies between 200 euros and 600 euros, how much the compensation based on how long the delay is and then based on how long your flight is. So if you travel from Europe, even on an American carrier, you will get some sort of compensation if their operation stinks. So our boy Bernie Sanders, he's got razzling his sables today. This is more of a fun thing. I mean, Matthew Clint wrote about this week from Live and Let's Fly, and it's been covered extensively. He wants to fine airlines $55,000 per passenger if they're not sufficiently staffed and ready to get people around the country. Seems a little bit over the top.
A tad.
So if you have a 777 full, it's a little bit shy of $20 million for a flight cancellation. So obviously that's, substantial.
Yeah, I suppose you could argue that's an incentive not to cancel the flight, but if you don't have any crews to operate it, what are you going to do?
you know, it's somebody gets sick and you're on it, you know, it happens. It's not that often that it happens, but say, for example, here in Sacramento, if American Airlines had a flight going here, and overnight, the folks who are going to fly the plane in the morning gets food poisoning and ends up, you know, whatever. Flight's going to be canceled. It's just the way it is. And so how do you solve that? And, you know, if it's a 737, so, you know, if it's 737-800 that flies here, it's only $10 million fine. But that's a little bit substantial. So, you know, this is just crazy. And, but I do agree with Bernie Sanders that we need to have some sort of legislation here that kind of takes care of the minimum stuff, meaning a place to sleep, a place to something to eat, and some sort of monetary compensation if there are things under the airline's control, I think. And moving on today, we've got some news in the miles and points. This isn't really that relevant for those who fly or travel a lot, but if you are not a frequent flyer and you don't fly a lot, and you have the Sapphire Reserve that you earn your miles and points on, which is, you know, one of the I would say that the Chase Ultimate Rewards Points is one of the most valuable currencies there are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very flexible. You can transfer it to tons of 16, 17 airlines, hotel chains. You can transfer it to Marriott. You can transfer your points to Hyatt, et cetera, et cetera. So they have added the Sapphire Reserve is the top tier card they have. So when you have the Sapphire Reserve now, you automatically get Marriott Bonvoy Gold Status. And Gold Status is a lower tier. It means that it's, what is it, 25 points a night? I mean 25 nights a year?
25 nights a year.
Yeah, so you get quite a substantial amount of extra points. So if you don't have Marriott status, it's actually not that bad. It beats the sharp stick in the eye.
Absolutely.
So if you have the Sapphire Reserve, it might be a good, and you want to get that automatic credit or the automatic status, I think that's a decent gig. And Sapphire Reserve is the card that earns the most points per dollar spent on dining outside of the United States. So we have some other breaking news today is Julie Rath, who started as head of AAdvantage just a couple of months ago. She has now been promoted to, what is she? She is going to be promoted as Senior Vice President of Airports. I don't know how being a president of AAdvantage, how being this SVP of Airports is an upgrade. But, you know, what do I know?
You know, knowing American like I know American from back in the day, that's probably an equivalent or slightly, maybe even be a slightly higher level job, the VP of Airports. But that is not a position that specifically existed in the decades ago when I was there.
Well, when you take into account that as a president, the boss of AAdvantage, you are literally responsible for all the profits of American Airlines because they don't make money flying planes. In 2019, their financial disclosure or their returns clearly stated that they didn't make any money from flying planes. They made all of their money from their AAdvantage program. So
from the miles, absolutely.
So there you
Sonny the cat.
Oh, there we go. How you doing? Look at that. I don't have one. They're hiding in the or they're actually in the bedroom taking a nap.
I'm the only one in the house now.
Oh, so it's scary. It's scary.
He's hanging out.
Good, beautiful. All right. So, and in some other quick news is also that Hilton has opened the first, I believe it's the first miles and points hotel in the Galapagos Islands, or like Fraser's dad used to call it when he back in the Galapagos Islands.
The Galapagos,
which I thought was really funny. So the Royal Palm Galapagos is a 21-room eco-friendly boutique hotel in the Curio collection. So what I was thinking we can do is to see how are we looking on Galapagos province. How are we looking to say if we want to go a couple of days in September? No hotels. It said that it opened. Oh, there we go. $317. Use points. 134,000 points. Uchi mama.
For the first night.
Yeah, just one night. That's. I think so. They have. It's a premium reward. Maybe if we move the stay down the road for a little bit and do, say, sometime in January, and see what that happens with that. No, it's the same gig. It does 134,000. Maybe it's they have this villa here, which is $500. It really doesn't look like something to do cartwheels over, but it's from what I read in this article that was posted by TPG. They're renovating its nature's wonderland, blah blah blah, island of Santa Cruz. And there are direct flights, and it's funny that the points guy doesn't realize that they're actually in America where we don't have direct flights, like that nonstop flights are direct flights here. But nevertheless, and no, I'm not trying to be anal retentive. I just am that way. So you can fly nonstop from Quito and from so it's from Guayaquil. I have never been to the Galapagos Islands. Have you?
Neither have I. I've been to both Quito and Guayaquil, but
I know that what's his face? Yeah, same here. I know that what's his face? Anders Lindström, who are a friend of ours, a common friend of ours, who used to work for Norwegian, and he's now the head of PR for Hurtigruten, the expedition cruises that they have. Also, Hurtigruten is he's been to the Galapagos Island a lot, so. I wonder if you can you go out to the, can you go out? You can ride a bike to the Tortoise Ranch and that kind of stuff. But I guess you have to in order to get out to the islands, you have to be booked on a ship of some kind, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
100%. But, first place, obviously not the best use of miles and points, but your free night you can use there. Your Hilton free night, maybe. I know there were some restrictions there too. I'll take that back. Probably not. But there is an opportunity here to at least earn. So the Hiltons are opening up in the Bahamas. Then we're going to do the next 7 I want to talk a little bit about is the California high-speed rail. And I'm just going to, it's a common misconception that, there was some big news happening about a week ago or a few days ago, right before the July 4th. And I'm just going to run this video because it kind of, people think that it's just a Fata Morgana. It doesn't exist, but it most certainly does.
There it is, being built.
Yeah. So I think that people are not aware that the 174 miles tracks that are approved and built. It is it's between Bakersfield and Merced, and they've been building this thing for about 3-4 years now, and it's supposed to be done 27, 28 ish. 2027, not 3027 or 2127. It's going to be done in 4 to 5 years from now. And there are most definitely a full action going on, building every day. There's 16 building projects happening at every single day. And if we look at the CEDAR viaduct south of Fresno, this is some serious construction we're talking about here.
Sure.
I mean, look at that. Look at this viaduct going across the starts up here. Oh, this is where the tracks will go over various highways and other train tracks. And so it's over, multiple roads and highways. And they're literally building all over the place. But a lot of, what has stalled in the last year, like always would have had, is politics. And it could be national politics, and it can be California politics. Politicians are just not any better than anywhere in the world. I mean, some are better than others, but at the end of the day, this is a project we need, I think.
I've always been a big supporter of high-speed rail. I've thought that in America, it has certain regional applications, and LA to San Francisco. And, and nearby is certainly one of those regions where this seems to make the most sense to me.
Right.
It's enormously expensive. I recognize that, but I think this is probably a good project, good spend. There are probably a few other markets outside of New York or DC, New York, Boston, that would work for high-speed rail in America if we can kind of muster the will to get them built.
I see Jeff Casey, our friend Jeff Casey, our lifelong friend who's been up he's retired now, is just traveling the world, having a good time. I'm so jealous of him. Jeff, I'm gonna hit you up offline when we're done with the webcast. We can most definitely see what we can do there to help you out. But I want to talk a little bit about more of what has happened in the last couple of years. So the Trump administration, we're not big fans of California, as we know. It's probably the massive surplus that we have out here, and also all the successes that we have. It's that kind of annoys the former administration. So it stopped a lot of the project from progressing and getting the funding that was underway. And high-speed rail, just, in order to get a better grasp of what we're talking about here, building it is we're talking astronomical cost, mostly because of, construction projects are generally expensive. It also has to be earthquake proof. All of these, all of the infrastructures that we're looking at here, all of them have to be, there's a lot of earthquake, there's geological, events in the area, which makes it more difficult to build tunnels and aqueducts and things like that. So if there's an earthquake, nothing happens. So that's one thing. The second thing is the people are thinking this costs so much money, it'll never make money, which I highly doubt that that's the case. If we look at the Japanese market and how the Shinkansen works, we were talking about San Francisco to LA, which is about the same travel time, a little bit shorter actually from San Francisco to LA than between Tokyo and Kyoto. And the Nozomi Shinkansen, the fastest one, because there's multiple of them. It goes every 10 minutes in peak hours of the day. Every one of those train sets hosts 1,800 people fit in one of those train sets. 1,800 people, which is 10 737s Euro style or 12 American style 737.
Sure.
And that's one. Every 10 minutes we're talking about here. 10 minutes later, there's another 12. And 10 minutes after that, another 12, et cetera, et cetera. Meaning that the number of flights we have between LA and San Francisco is probably, under normal times, I would say that Southwest, Delta, American, JetBlue, whoever the case may be, that flies, United, they're rocking and rolling probably in the neighborhood of, I would say, total about 30 flights a day, which is what they do in Japan in 30 minutes. So to me, what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that people want to do it because it's not cheap traveling with high-speed rail in Japan. It's more expensive than flying. We're talking, maybe $120, $130 to go that, the currency, the yen is dollar is super strong right now. But, a little bit more than $100 for economy class to go down from those two destinations. And why are there so many, though? Are there so many more people? Yeah, there are a lot of people. There are more people there than are here. But at the end of the day, though, it is because of frequency, speed, and also the advantages is much more than just going from LA to San Francisco. And I want to take a little bit of a look at that.
Sure.
So this is the project, how phase 1 and phase 2 is. So the area that's being built now, I don't know if you can see the mouse, is from Merced, which is up here, all the way down to Bakersfield, which is 176 miles is how long it is between those two. So that thing is, it's funded, it's paid for, it's secured. They literally just, the high-speed rail last week, we got a 4th of July gift. The state of California had a $92 billion surplus last year. So yes, they are collecting way too many taxes here for sure when they can sport that kind of profits. But $92 billion. Out of that, high-speed rail got the money they needed to fulfill to finalize and complete the Bakersfield to Merced segment, and also to invest all of the train infrastructure that they needed. So they can now buy the trains, order them, and they can arrive, and so they can start testing. Probably the tracks are going to be ready in 2026, 27, and they're going to start doing testing, but before they open. So, and then, a lot of people would have been saying it's a train to nowhere. Yeah, Merced to Bakersfield is definitely have you ever been in those areas?
I've been to Bakersfield. I don't remember very much about it.
I think that's a good description of Bakersfield. A lot of cows down that way.
Oh, good.
But
you got to get the backbone of the thing built somehow. So that's
right.
A start.
The backbone, that's the spine is what they call it, between Merced here and Bakersfield here. That's the segment, or one of the segments, where it will go 220 miles an hour, because it needs to go that fast in order to get to the target. The project was approved by the state of California that travel time between downtown San Francisco and downtown LA is not to exceed more than 2 hours and 40 minutes. That's the target. So the train will go 220 miles an hour from Bakersfield. And of course, so Merced is kind of a different city, as you can see. It kind of goes up towards phase 2, which is Sacramento, in the area where I live. I live up here somewhere. But it's kind of there's an intersection here that's being built. So what about the train to nowhere thing? Well, I actually was surprised to see how much is going on the other segment. From San Francisco to San Jose, this segment right here, high-speed rail paid about $600 million a few years ago to electrify the line that goes from San Francisco to San Jose. One of the most trafficked, highest trafficked numbers that we see in the country when it comes to commuting. People going down the Silicon Valley, Google is in there, and Google has been a big driver for getting this done. So this means that, the power that runs these trains, first of all, acceleration is better, they're faster, and they're more reliable than the diesel ones that go now. And there's zero emissions because California is only using renewables to run these trains. So obviously those diesel trains, that's a big advantage. Sure. This is done. They're just doing testing now. They've gotten their trains. So the trains that you see here are the double-decker Siemens trains that was delivered. They're made here in the U.S. They're German trains, but they have manufacturing here in the U.S. where they put them together. And sure. That's opening next year, end of 2023. So that means that looking at the map, from San Francisco to San Jose is ready for high-speed rail, 115 miles an hour, not 220, but 115 miles an hour is available on that line from next year. I think December of 2023 is when it's opening. And that means that in reality, what we have left then here's Merced, this is being built, and to here, this is being built. We need the San Jose to the intersection here is what we need to be built. I don't know if everybody can see that, but you can see my cursor there on the right. This is the area, and the area here that we see from Gilroy up to the intersection. That's going to be 220 miles an hour too. That's not an existing track situation. But from Gilroy to San Jose, that's also Caltrains. They're all that line already exists, and it's also an easier line to electrify because it is more rural than the highly congested area between San Francisco and San Jose. So this piece here, what I gather is that they're going to get the high-speed rail last week got funding from California, got close to $4 billion to finalize the first thing. Caltrains got what they needed to finalize what they need to do. And for next year, there's an additional $5 billion. And that obviously is going to be used. If you look at they're not saying it yet, but if you look in the California Rails, the website that I'm on, so hsr.ca.gov. If you go to that website, you see they're focusing on this segment here from Gilroy up in the mountains. So these tracks already exist for 110 miles an hour. You just need to put up electricity on that line. This line has to be built, but it's not a big compared to the Merced to Bakersfield. It's a pretty short gig, and there's also a lot of tunnels that are going to be challenging. But I think that before 2030, we're going to see all of that being completed. And as you can see that, but obviously, so the politics that we saw, why it was delayed again, was that the politicians from the South, they said, hey, why should we approve these funds for the North? It has no benefits for us when it's the train to nowhere from Merced to Bakersfield, blah, 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 blah. And yes, Merced to Bakersfield, so much nothing in one place. Absolutely. I don't know who said that, but I couldn't agree more. But we still have to get through the fields there. So at the end of the day, it's I feel optimistic about it. I see there's another hurdle in the northern part of it, which is those who've been to San Francisco. They have seen that the Trans-Bay, not the Trans-Gay, it was I said earlier today, but Trans-Bay Transit Center. It's the Salesforce station. And the Salesforce station is done. It's buses. There are 5 million passengers a year that go through that terminal. It's buses. It is, street transportation and things like that, long way buses and all that stuff. So that happens today. And in the basement, there are tracks, high-speed tracks, but it doesn't go anywhere. So I don't know if you can't see it. I'm zoomed all the way in. There is an extension, a small tunnel that's going to cost a couple of $1 billion to.
Of course it is.
Pardon?
I said, of course it is.
Yeah, so I'm going to look at that, see if I can look it up and find. I had a window. I must have closed it. It's called the DTX Downtown Extension, San Francisco.
Right.
They built the station already. The station for high-speed rail is ready, but it's just not. So I mean, here I found a picture of it. Let me go to this website here. This is pretty decent. I'm just going to pull it over for a second. So the current station that's here is the 4th and King rail yard. Is where that's the train station today. That's what exists right now.
Right.
That's where where all the Caltrains terminate and everybody else. The new station is up here. So this little piece of tunnel needs to be built in order for it to be efficient and smart. And they don't have the funding for that. I don't see that, that the funding is going to come. But obviously, from a longer term perspective, there are tunnels on each side of that station, because obviously what they want to do is to get train extended across the bay, because it's
absolutely
shot. And, meaning that I can hop on the train here and I could be on the train for 32 minutes and go have real sushi instead of the junk we have in my area. And come back after dinner and go back home the same day. Same way that you do in Europe. It's the same distance from Sacramento to San Francisco as it is from Hamburg to Hannover. Half an hour, good coffee, have a couple of drinks with Stefan,
sure.
who is a friend of mine who lives there. go back in the afternoon and head back to your hotel. That's what I think is important. So
Good times.
Yeah. So, and for those who are curious about Modesto, Stockton, and Sacramento, it is phase 2. I'm probably going to be dead and gone before we get there, but who knows? There's a lot of positive things. We know that high-speed rail has gotten $5 billion for next year, which is probably going to be allocated between Gilroy and the intersection here. And for the electrification between San Jose and Gilroy, which Caltrain is going to chip in some. City of San Jose, if you go to the YouTube channel that California High Speed Rail has, you also see that they have full activity, and the cities and the businesses are willing to chip in to make this happen. So, but then we have high speed rail from San Francisco to Bakersfield, which is, I would venture into saying, not that exciting. But I think that, so why do we need that? So why, for the next, for this to be done, it's probably going to be 10 years before it gets done. Probably longer than that.
Yeah, at least.
But if we look at what's being built now, the area around San Jose, it's the most expensive and the most sought after area when it comes to jobs in the United States. You have Apple has 80,000 employees. It's Facebook, Google, HP, Intel, all of these guys. This is like Tesla has their biggest factory there. All of the Tesla cars are made there. The trucks are going to be built in Texas, but that's where all the stuff is. You've got Oracle. You've got all of these companies. This is where tech and innovation for the world happens, in this tiny area here. And the issue that we're seeing, and why that these businesses are so interested, you don't get talent because unless you're willing to pay this talent hundreds of thousands of dollars, which you can't do with all people, of course.
Sure.
They don't know where to, they can't live in the area because it's just too expensive. A house here where I am, a house down there, a similar house to the house that I have, is 5 times more if my house was there compared to the 2.5 hour northeast that I am.
Right.
5 times more the money. So what can happen, of course, is that you could build subdivisions here. You could build subdivisions in Merced or in Madera. You can have little communities around here because guess what? San Jose to Gilroy, that's 10, 15 minutes.
Absolutely. It makes it viable.
Distance is just, it's thinking about how long it takes to drive to Sacramento. It'll take longer for me to drive into the city here than it will take for me to go from Merced to downtown San Jose. So that's the benefit to things. It's great for the economy because then we can have more workers work here in California, which means more tax revenue. These businesses can move ahead and they can, continue to be the leading companies in the world innovating. But they can also hire people to come into the office that makes 55, 60, 70, 80,000 instead of just the big shot names that can afford to live in San Jose. And they still, obviously, they all have these type of employees that are middle class or that are 50 to 100,000 income, which is still a significant amount of money. But they live so far away that they're sitting hours every day in traffic to get to and from the office. I actually had the neighbor that we had right next door that lived to us. He couldn't take it anymore. He left his house at 4 a.m. to drive to San Jose. And he got home at 8:30 every night. He came home to his house. Monday.
That's horrible.
Friday, he could work from home. This was before the pandemic.
Sure.
So, the guy was exhausted. It's not sustainable, but that's what he needed to do to support his family. Now he can drive for 5 minutes and he can sit his ass down on a train and he can have his cup of coffee for 10, 15 minutes. He's not even going to get to the end of the Wall Street Journal before he pulls into work. So that's the benefits of that. So that's why it's very critical to get it going right now versus in the future. And the last piece of obviously thing here is south of Bakersfield and down to Palmdale. And there's also going to be a station at Burbank Airport, which I find very fascinating because then you actually have the people at Bakersfield they're doing better than people that are in San Bernardino, because getting to LAX is a pain in the butt, and same to Burbank as well as the pain. Yes, you have Ontario, but it is, you can get on the train and head down to Burbank Airport. It's just one stop before you get there. You stop in Palmdale, and then you're in. There are so many caption areas. People can park around these two stations, get on the high-speed rail, and, and instead of paying, $30, $40, $50 to park in the city, they can get into Burbank, and they can fly out of there, which I think is tremendously better, and for both the environment and for everybody, that's how it's supposed to be. So I know what your next question is going to be. What happens with these things that are not done? I don't know. I think that they are working simultaneously, but I do think that it's more important to connect the northern part because of the Caltrain electrification that's already happened between San Francisco and San Jose, which means that you are done. You can, even without that $2 billion little tunnel that takes about 5 minutes to walk, you're done. It takes very little money to finish this. This valley here there's a lot of earthquakes going on and things like that. And also the getting into Union Station in San Francisco and LA is also going to be a challenge. I'm not, they're simultaneously working on it, but I think that it's realistic to see what part of the project should happen first. And we know that today Caltrain has their local diesel train, goes from Gilroy to San Francisco with stops along the way. We know that that's a fact, and it's electrified all the way to San Jose now, opening late next year, probably early 2024. I'm sure there'll be another delay, but the trains are already here. That's the cool part, and they're testing them out. So I do think that Gilroy that means that there is major advantages for both. That means that you have zero emission for commuting between Gilroy, San Jose, San Francisco, vice versa. Right, that's a big advantage, and also the speed goes up dramatically. Instead, the tracks, I think the average goes up with about 12 miles per hour. Is how much the faster the new train compared to the old. So not super, but bear in mind that Caltrain is Caltrain. Sure. It stops every 2 minutes.
Absolutely.
So it's not it'll be shorter and it'll be more frequency, but that's kind of the gig. But for the southern part, I mean, yes, there is going to be for sure. There's going to be parallel runs, and it'll be interesting to see if it'll be done in 2034, so 12 years from now, if it'll be done.
That's aggressive, I think, but we'll see how it turns out. I'm surprised they've gotten as much done as they have, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pleased to see the progress for the whole spine of it, for sure. I mean, it's not nothing. That we have this little piece here and we have this little piece here, which obviously are $20-30 billion pieces. So, but at the end of the day, if we say that it's $120 for the finances of this, so $20-30 billion maybe is what on top of it is what we're going to be looking at, in addition to what's been approved. They've approved another 5 or close to 4 and another 5 for next year. But if we say one Shinkansen train and we say the average is $120 and it's 1,800 people on that train, we're talking about $216,000 every 10 minutes. That's the revenue, each direction. So every time you see those trains pull into the station, going each direction, that's, if they're full like they are in rush hour, we're talking about over, $432,000 in 10 minutes. That's what we're talking about here. So it's not chicken shoot money we're talking about. It's real cash. And the high-speed rail makes money everywhere in the world, and it will make money here, and it will make the life better for everybody.
And making the quality of life better has value as well. It can't be measured, so or quantified with dollars, but you still got to count it.
I completely agree. The thing of sitting in traffic, having long commutes, instead having 20-30 minutes or whatever the case may be here, to accelerate this stuff, and with no emissions from all those cars that travel on these roads, we are talking serious stuff here. And we're also looking at Brightline. We can talk about that in 2 weeks from now. But Brightline is moving into Vegas to LA. It's a private company that's looking at building that, and they're not going to build their halfway stuff that they're doing in the diesel stuff that they're doing in Florida. They are going to do electric and high speed, and the access to power is going to be in the Mojave Desert, where they're going to have massive solar plants that are going to be running these trains. So the solar is going to run this stuff. There's so many big projects, especially now you have all of these chuckleheads who are on social media right now. Oh, you're going to have brownouts. Oh, the poor kids in Africa with So all of a sudden, those dudes with pickup trucks have gotten a conscience for what happens to lithium guys in Africa. That's like I just find it really amusing, to say the least. But at the end of the day, California is building so much renewable now, especially since it's mandated. Our house in 2016, we built this house, and it was mandatory then to put solar panels on your house. So you are not allowed to build and add to the grid, more than X amount to the grid, to the grid here in California, which, and I'm not going to lie to you. It's a lot of, I like traveling by train. I like the convenience. I love, coming into Heathrow, and I don't like, nobody likes Heathrow, but getting on the train and it taking 14 minutes from Terminal 3 to downtown to Paddington is,
it's a good deal.
It's phenomenal. You could either do that, or like back in the day, it's an hour and 20 minutes in a taxi, or now an Uber. That's I'm not going to lie to you. It's pretty exciting, to say the least.
I wish we could do that from downtown DC to Dulles.
Isn't it open there now?
The metro line will be open. I'm going to say next year at some point.
Hasn't it been done for like 3 years already?
No, well, it's extended partway out past Tyson's. I forget where it ends now, but the rest of the line all the way out to Dulles, I will be open next year. Last I heard, it could have been delayed again. I haven't checked lately.
Yeah, no. So I think that at the end of the day, I feel it's we're making some progress. I hope that the project in Texas, which is literally taking the Shinkansen trains, the N700 series from Japan, and building them up on stilts so they have minimum impact. They're literally, since it's flat as a pancake there. I hope that moves ahead, and if it does, it'll be done before us, because it's very much easier to build in Texas. So meaning that the phase one is downtown Houston to downtown Dallas in the same amount of times it takes to fly, almost, when it comes to getting to and from the airport. Actually faster than flying, because of the time to the airport and the proximity of the airports, which I think would be really cool. We'll cover that in a couple of weeks, if at all possible. All right, so we will go on to the next thing. Is I want to talk. We talked a little bit. Rudy and I talked a little bit on the channel earlier about Crystal Cruises, and Crystal is a decent cruise line. Right. Have you ever been on a Crystal cruise?
I have. I parked beside Crystal. That's about as close as I've been. They only had 2 ships most of the time, I think, when I was most aware of them. They had a very good reputation for service, dining, etc. Really high-end experience.
Right.
For a larger ship, although the Explorer ship you have here is on the smaller side.
Right.
But I was sad to see them go. But I think we were talking about earlier, the problem wasn't the cruise line per se. It was the outfit that bought them in Hong Kong that was loaded up with debt.
Yeah, I mean, they made a couple of bad moves. Rudy and I talked about that. They started that air cruise where they had $150,000 to $200,000 per person to fly around the world on a brand new 787, and they also had a used 777-200ER from Delta, which kind of almost killed them. when they stopped that, they still owned all of the one of the planes here till not be right before the pandemic, where they were renting it out. They were chartering that plane because it was kind of cool. You had a bar and a restaurant in the front. So between door 1 and 2, it was no seats. It was just a bar and seating for you to sit down and have a meal. Which, you know, let's just say it's an expensive piece of real estate. Especially since it burns X amount of fuel per hour. Before dinner, you'll get your before your dinner is over, you burnt you know, a couple $100 worth of fuel per person on that plane, probably more.
So yeah, sounds like it. Sounds like a big ticket item or a boondoggle to me. But hey.
So that project never happened for sure, but they had 2 ships for the most of the time, which is absolutely correct. And then they built the Crystal Endeavor, which is their expedition ship, which among other places went to the Galapagos Islands for a while, and also down to it's you know, it's got the ICE certification. It was recently sold to. So the owner company was based in Hong Kong. They had no clue of how to run a cruise line, obviously, because it went overboard very quickly, and because of the pandemic, it came to a grinding halt. They couldn't pay their bills. The ships were arrested and were sold at auction recently, but we'll get to that. But the Endeavor was new. It was delivered in 2021 to Crystal. So in the middle of all the fun, or was it maybe in 2020? It was during the pandemic for sure. Delivered to Crystal in 2021. So is what it says in this article. Has been sold to, reportedly, and the Royal Caribbean has bought it, but they bought Silver Seas, a daughter company of Royal Caribbean, purchased this ship. Is what's being said, but there hasn't been a public confirmation of that as of yet. But that's what the paperwork says. So they're probably going to align it with that. So Silver Seas is an Italian, I would say the same type of cruise line as Crystal, right?
Yeah, but probably smaller ships.
A little bit smaller ships, but you know, we're not talking the Crystal. What are they called? The ones they're called Symphony and Serenity. They were they weren't that big. I mean, it was like 800 people, right?
You know, I'm not sure. I probably that brings about 800 to 1,000, maybe.
Here we go. The size of the cruise ship: Symphony is 51,000 gross tons, and the Serenity 68,000. Each just over 1,000 passengers.
Okay.
So one was delivered in 96. The other one was delivered in 2003. But I know that they did a redo of these ships and put in really expensive beds. They put in Heston's bed in their suites, which are beds that cost, you know, $10,000 and up. In like, what was that? 2016 or 17 or something like that?
Yeah.
And so they're definitely stepping it up. So, and here's what's funny: the guy who purchased these ships. So it was sold at auction. The Bahamas court sold these ships. They sold them for $103 million. It was appraised at only $37.5 for the newer one, and $25 million for the second one. So they paid $127 million for these ships. I wouldn't say that that's crazy, but it seems to me like a low number when I the Underpants of the Seas, the newest one with 8,000 employees and 30,000 people on it.
Yeah,
cost like $1
billion and change. Yeah, sure.
So a little exciting, and also it's funny that Royal Caribbean bought Silver Seas. The dude who owned Silver Seas, the Italian guy, friends of ours and friends of Peter Greenberg's, good friends with him. What the hell's his name again? Not friends of mine. I don't have any friends in high places except for you. But Italian guy who founded Silver Seas. He's the guy who bought the other 2 ships. So he is the guy who owns, and Abercrombie and Kent are going to be operating this ship starting next year. That's like full circle. So he sold Silver Seas for $2 billion.
So he's got to spend his money on something. So
and
he
then
might as well buy these 2
bought,
ships.
2 million Ferraris, and then he spent $126 million on buying these 2 ships and starting up a competing cruise line again.
Yep.
I think that's cool. Well, it's going to be run under the name Crystal Cruises, and it's going to be, but it's owned and distributed by Abercrombie and Kent.
That's interesting, and I hadn't heard that until you mentioned it earlier when we were chatting.
Yeah,
that Crystal is coming back.
Yeah, I think that's exciting. I think that it's a great cruise line to try out. Maybe we should try them next. I mean, we got a cruise booked. And
I do too in August.
August, yeah. Where are you going? Not to the
Bahamas. Yeah, just the Bahamas, Nassau and Coco Cay. We're doing a short 4-nighter.
We're doing June next year. We're doing Alaska.
Oh, cool! Good for you.
Start up in. I don't know what it's the boss of the household is taking care of the logistics here, but I think it's like outside of Anchorage, like south on the water there.
Yeah,
and then it goes down ends up in Vancouver. It stops, all the nice places.
That's
there.
Cool.
Where Jamie was for 15 minutes. On his milk run here last weekend.
Super. That's good. You'll enjoy the Alaska cruise.
I bet that I will. I will enjoy it, very much for sure. It's my first cruise since before that guy sneezed.
Oh, yeah. Since the COVID.
The COVID, yes. And that's a wrap. That's all I had for this week. Did you have anything that you've read in the last few days you wanted to talk about?
I have been so wrapped up in work, and, I wish I could talk about some of my work things because I think that people would find them interesting. But, the certain model of airplane issue that I've been working on for a long time, it seems like. Lots of stuff going on. But looking forward to getting back on the road a little bit on business in the next 3 to 4 weeks. I have been out on the road some, and it's a different beast out there now. So pack your patience.
Well, I just, that's why you have so many cats, because you can talk to Buddy about all of those things that you've been working on.
Absolutely. Buddy loves hearing about it.
You can't talk with anybody else. Right? Okay, well, there we have it. That is the Miles and Points Report simulcast to Rudy Max's World, Rudy Max's Tours, and also to the various FT Events channels. I thank you all for joining. Thank you so much, Marshall. I feel like I talked a lot more than you did. You did extra much today, so I think I need to get something to drink, but I'll see you hopefully in a couple of weeks.
In 2 weeks, and I'll find something to talk about between now and then.
Well, giddy up, as they say, up in the mountains of Colorado. And thank you all for joining us. Bye-bye.